Hey y'all, Carolina Tony here, and I am back with Fred McCoy, and we are in Matewan, West Virginia. We have another Hatfield and McCoy story for you. This one's gonna have a little twist on it. This is about Hubert Bay McCoy. It's a pretty tragic tale, and we'll share this story with you and get started right after this station identification.
Back in 1947, Tony, there was a fellow named Hubert Bay McCoy. Now, let's go back to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He was a young man, and he joined the Army, like a lot of people here did in America, to take up for their country. He fought in the Pacific, some of the worst places you could be, especially Omaha Beach. He made it all through World War II. He came home. He brought his bride back from Europe, and his 6-month-old daughter, his bride Catherine, and his daughter Virginia. And he comes back here and he gets a job in the coal mines right down here in Red Jacket, and he just lived right up here on the hill. We're going to go by there tomorrow and show you the cemetery where he's buried at. There's a Blue Goose Inn right on the other side of this building that you'll show after a while. And if you'll put it over there on that beige building, that is the old city hall and the jail, the Matewan jail, and it's still there today. It's not used, but it's a historical site. Of course, the railroad tracks was here in 1947, and in between these railroad tracks, or on the other side of them, was a depot, Matewan Depot. They have now moved it and built a replica up the street there. But in 1947, February the 17th, he had left the coal mines to come home, where he shot coal, and he used dynamite. So they say a good way to get rid of the taste and the smell of the dynamite in your mouth and stuff is alcohol. So the coal miners would usually stop by the local saloon over here and have them a beer or two. The policeman come in and arrested his friend, a friend of Hubert Bay's. Now, Hubert Bay had just been out of the military less than a year, and had that mentality, all for one and one for all, the Three Musketeers thing. And besides that, the police chief here in Matewan at the time was Alan Hatfield, another Hatfield. Now, this Alan Hatfield was a totally different Alan Hatfield, or a totally different Hatfield than Devil Anse and Sid Hatfield. But that is who he wanted to model himself after. Devil Anse Hatfield from the Hatfield-McCoy Feud, Sid Hatfield from the 1921 Matewan Massacre, and this was 1947, this 20-some years later. Alan Hatfield was the police chief here for only 2 years, but during those 2 years, he shot and killed 2 men. Both of those men he was indicted for and stood trial. The first trial, the guy that he shot, not a lot of people liked, so they let him go, found him not guilty on it. The second one was Hubert Bay McCoy. Now, somewhere between the Blue Goose Inn and going out through here arresting his friend and taking him to the jail, Hubert Bay tells the police chief, if you're going to take him to jail, you're taking me with him. Now, you can say it's alcohol, you can say it's whatever. We don't think he was drunk because this was only an hour and a half after he'd gotten off work. So he's going to jail with his friend in order to protect him from the Hatfield's reputation of abusing some of the prisoners. When he gets right here in this area somewhere, him and the police chief get into an argument. The police chief shoves him, tells him to get on up toward the jail, and when he pushes him, Hubert Bay turns around and punches him. When he punches him, he knocks him over the embankment here of the railroad tracks. When he does, the other police officer grabs Hubert Bay, and they start wrestling. The police chief comes up with his pistol 6 to 8 feet away and shoots unarmed Hubert Bay McCoy in the back of the head, killing him dead. His brothers and all of them go home and tell his dad what happened to Hubert Bay. Now, the feud almost got revived at this point because the dad and his brothers, everybody got their guns, and they were coming down the Matewan to kill the police chief. The neighbors tackled them. They're all up there wrestling on the hill when somebody come up to the father and told Glenn, his father, that the sheriff had just arrested the police chief for murder. So they arrested the police chief. They indicted the police chief, Alan Hatfield, and he stood trial, and they found him guilty. 12 citizens found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter. Now, in the first trial, his policeman didn't show up to testify, In the second trial, the policeman did show up, and this policeman said, hey, Hubert Bay had no gun. He was unarmed. The police chief said, well, he took the officer's gun and had it pointed at him. The officer says at no time did my gun ever leave my holster. He never had my gun. He was unarmed. So they found him guilty. Now, the sad part to this story is, and to speed it up a little bit, is after years went by, some of the older Hatfields, some of them even living today, has said and told the news media in North Carolina, they done a tape that we've got on one of our videos where he's actually on a videotape telling the radio person there about his grandfather raiding a brothel. And the person, what they want to do is act like the person was so mad because they were interrupted in the brothel that he shot the police chief 3 times in the back. Hubert Bay, this was not in a brothel. This was right here on these railroad tracks where Hubert Bay was killed. And but the story is that they've spread is that shot his grandfather 3 times. His grandfather turned around and shot him and killed him, and it happened to be a McCoy. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. But if you look at all the newspaper articles, you saw them down in our museum, hanging on the walls. We've got over 200 newspaper articles. Hatfield shoots unarmed McCoy. Hatfield's indicted. Hatfield's found guilty, sentenced to 5 years hard labor.
Well, he comes back and even says it was an accident.
At one time he said it was an accident. He says the gun just went off. And then the last one he said in court under oath was that he had taken the officer's gun and pointed it at him, and he had to defend himself, and he shot and killed him. At no time was he ever, from all the witnesses, there was other people that come out of the saloon during all this and witnessed it. So the sad thing is they've taken a zero and turned them into a hero, and a hero, a World War II hero, and turned them into with this story, a zero.
And he actually never served time either, did he?
No, never did serve any
house
time.
arrest.
He agreed to move to Huntington, West Virginia, and I think that's where one of his grandsons actually grew up at, was in Huntington. He now lives in...
Okay, this is where Hubert Bay's parents were buried. His mother was born in 1903 and died in 1971. And his father, Glenn, was born in 1897 and died in 1963. Now his grandmother, Della McCoy, she died in 1947, and that was what now?
Well, it was just a couple of months after he was murdered. From what they say, him and his grandmother was real close. And so she just died he died in February the 17th, he died.
Wow.
Or was killed. And she died a couple of months later.
So buried right next to her, Hubert Bay, is his brother Jim. Now what was the story with him?
Well, Jim was with Hubert Bay when they come on from the coal mines that day and stopped at the Blue Goose Saloon. Him and two other guys that witnessed the shooting and what took place down there. Jim is the one that come home and told his father down here. He lived right down at the bottom of the hill, and he told his father that the police chief had just shot and killed Hubert Bay, and the dad went and got his guns, and Jim got his guns, and then the neighbors all converged and tried to tackle them and keep everybody from, said, you're going to start the feud again. And by then, somebody had come up from Mate 1 and said, hey, it's okay. The sheriff had just arrested Alan Hatfield for murder. If you watch very many of my videos, you know I end a lot of my stories about people in the graveyard because it is the ultimate end of our human body anyway. Nonetheless, we go on to live forever.
However, this is the final resting place of Hubert Bay McCoy. I hope you enjoyed our video about Hubert Bay McCoy, about how he was assassinated, and a little bit about his life. Also, I want to thank Fred and Sheila McCoy for bringing us up here on the side of this mountain, because I would have never found it by myself. If you enjoy this video, give me a big old thumbs up. Be sure to share with your family and friends so others can see it as well. And until next time, y'all have a good day.